We're here to wrap up the second part of a two-part series talking about our favorite transfer portal prospects for the 2026 NBA draft class cycle. I'm Stephen Gillaspie. That's my co-host, Jam Hines. Jam, how we feeling, brother?
Fantastic. It's NFL Sunday. We're wrapping up part two of our favorite transfers. Like, it's going to be a great time, great day.
That's right. All right, let's rock. Welcome back to the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We are also on your podcast player of choice. I'm Stephen Gillaspie, the resident Rams fan here over at No Ceilings, and I'm joined by my 49er co-host, Jam Hines. Jam, how we doing, brother?
Fantastic, man. We got a great slate today. Like I said, it's NFL Sunday too. Couldn't ask for anything much better.
That's right. That's right. All right. So, Jam, before we dive into this fun slate, dude, and I kind of teased it in the last episode that I feel like this slate is probably more heavy hitting in terms of like real NBA potential prospects within this group. Before we dive into the group, though, man, let's hit the folks with a little bit of the housekeeping.
Yeah, no doubt. On NoCeilingsNBA.com, Metcalf has his film school on the Duke scrimmage. Metcalf also has something else up on the site. It's killing already early. The scout on Dwayne Aristotle and Koa Pete. Nathan has his Atlantic Division preview of the young players. And Ignacio has his piece on the role of experience in college roster building, which was a really fantastic piece, just about the intricacies of roster building, kind of where we could be heading right now. And over on the Locked On NBA podcast, No Ceilings, Rucker and Metcalf had pods on Duke, Arizona, and the Arkansas scrimmage reactions. Nathan and Maxwell discussed the top NBA juniors that was led by Wemby, of course, Amon, Mr. Miller, of course, Brandon Miller, and Tumani Kamara. And Albert and Corey had pod scouts from Jaden Quaintnitz, possibly one of the more polarizing players in this class, and Isaiah Harwell. And then finally, on No Ceilings NBA YouTube and podcast feed, Rucker and Metcalf had their Big East preview. They also kicked off their top 30 prospects in 30 days, and they have a bunch of guys that's been coming on recently from London Jemison, Dwayne Aristotle, Christian Anderson, Paul McNeil, Carter Knox, and Isaiah Evans.
That's right. And shout out to Corey Tolba, who did his job by producing real quick, threw on the graphics a little bit.
Yeah.
We would be nothing at No Ceilings if it wasn't for Corey. So shout out to our guy, Corey. Hope you're having a good Sunday, brother. All right. So, Jam, thank you for breaking down the housekeeping. As everyone has seen, we got a bunch of stuff going on over with the No Ceilings group. Jam, for us, before we even dive into today, you and I have covered 44 unique prospects within this draft class doing our breakdown. Today is going to take us out to 50, count them, 50 prospects.
5-0.
Yeah, dude, we almost got a full big board loaded up. So let's not delay any farther, dude. Let's give the folks who came here to hang out with us on this beautiful Sunday, let's give them the first prospect. This is a guy that you were wanting to talk about in particular on this episode. We're talking about Henri Veesaar, the transfer coming from Rutgers, Arizona to UNC. The big man, junior, 7 feet tall, 225 pounds, will be 22 years old if he gets drafted in the 2026 NBA draft for his first season. Last year averaged over 9 points per game, 5 boards, 1 assist, 1 block, almost 1 steal, with shooting splits of 59, 33, and 69. So, Jam, why was Veesaar one of the more interesting transfer fits for you, brother?
Yeah, first I want to give a shout out to Cody over at Game Break Now. Like, we had some exchanges just talking about Henry last year to kind of close the cycle as a guy that he really liked. And I was like, all right, maybe I see what you're saying. Let me give a closer look at like some of the flashes and really start to like him a lot late as he finished strong last year. And then, coming into this year, I think he made an excellent decision to go and to UNC. That is just such a perfect match. Talk about a team, UNC, who was starved for a physical big and a presence like that, with their philosophy and their playing styles, working it in and kind of just really having the big at the center of the offense and just really at everything that they do. So I just thought first and foremost, just that match of the need going to UNC and how they want to feature the bigs and utilize the bigs, and him getting the chance to go and do that, as you mentioned. He's an older prospect as well. Was he 21 or 22? What'd you say when he possibly would get drafted?
He'll be 22 his first NBA season if he gets drafted this coming draft.
So 22, so older prospects will get a chance for him to go ahead and shine with UNC with this matchup. But I like some of the pedigree first and foremost with him from Real Madrid Youth Basketball Academy as well, going up through that system, and then as you kind of hope and expect with a lot of the international big men, he kind of has a little bit of that modern feel for him with him and the upside. Like, it really does start with his play finishing first, though, at 7 feet, 225 pounds. I do have some questions about the overall athleticism, but I think he's a very capable play finisher with that pick and roll, working the dunker spots, handling drop-offs. A reasonably good lob threat as well, not super vertically explosive, but can certainly get it done at 7 feet and what looks like plus length as well. And then, I mean, the shooting, I think that's kind of the potential exciting thing with him and that modern skill. He shot 35% on unguarded catch and shoot threes. So I really do like what that looks like. It's a comfortable shot. Like, it doesn't look like a big man is shooting. It looks like this is a natural looking motion that's pretty clean. Do want to see him continue to hopefully shoot that three. He shot overall 32.7% on 1.3 attempts per game. So hopefully I want to see that raised. But you do have someone that could potentially work inside and outside as a play finisher around the rim, and then being able to step out as well. And then just defensively, I do like some of the tools, but really I thought moving forward, kind of looking at him at the NBA level, is going to be pretty much a pure drop defender. I didn't feel comfortable with him defending in space and just having him be someone that teams rely upon to go get stops or make it difficult for switching guards or whatever they're going to do, if it's wings or something like that. But I think it's going to be him really learning how to excel and drop. There was a play in the scrimmage that kind of showed a little bit of what you would hope it is, could be for him. He comes, get a stop and drop, runs the floor, hits the trail, catch and shoot three. So I think that's kind of what you're hoping for, what peak Veesaar could look like. Did you like Henry? Am I a little bit high on him? And I will say, maybe I buried the lead here, I do think that he is a first-round caliber big.
Oh, okay.
More of a backup big. So that's one reason I do like the fit with North Carolina. They're getting a high-quality big who could potentially be a first-rounder.
Yeah, I like Henry a good bit. I have him as a draftable dude. I don't know if I have him first round, but I definitely have him in my top 60.
Mm-hmm.
What stands out to me initially on the offense is just kind of how you put it so eloquently, Jim, is that he's one of these more modern offensive style bigs to where you trust him to be out on the perimeter a little bit, make a couple of dribbles and make a decision. You trust him to reject a handoff. I actually like his ball skills for his position, pretty decent. You obviously don't want him out there just like ISO'd on the top of the key, trying to take someone off the bouncer or anything like that. But I do, he's not going to Kyrie that thing at all. But I do like how he can reject handoffs, put the ball on the deck for a couple dribbles. He can make passes out of the short roll or just continuously put pressure on the rim. And that's kind of what I think his kind of signature ability is that he's constantly putting pressure on the basket, whether he's dribbling at the rim or whether he's, backing down his opponent or he's working off of a cut. There's just always that nose for the rim, whether he has the ball in his hands or not. He's just constantly wanting to put pressure on the rim. I think that he's got good hands too, Jam. I think that, once a pass is getting, entered into him, so to speak, like if the entry pass is getting thrown to his way, he's going to have the ball. He keeps it high for the most part. There were a couple times last year where I was looking through film where it's like, okay, kind of brought down the catch and really allowed the defense to converge on him and contest the shot like really heavily. But I do think that he does a good job setting screens, rolling to the basket. I trust him in the short roll. I did notice something on my film dive though, Jam, and it's the first thing on my notes, and I'm sure you see it too on the outline that I sent you. But he feels pretty high waisted to me for
Yeah.
his position too. And I think that number, like he's a fine rebounder, but he's not like gobbling up rebounds, like there's nobody else out on the court. And I think that his high waist, it can kind of lend himself to losing the battle of leverage sometimes where people can get up underneath him, like even players who are bigger than him. Obviously, those who are shorter, a little bit easier time getting underneath them, but even like size players, I feel like can carve out, kind of box out alleys, so to speak, against him and really just kind of like take him out of the rebounding game a little bit. Was that something that you kind of picked up on as well?
Yeah, just a little bit. I don't know if it was just kind of some of the positional stuff, like you were mentioning, whether it's on the glass or when he's trying to seal guys or get, post position and things like that. And I wonder how much that affects a little bit of his play finishing as well. I think he's a
Mm.
quality play finisher, but there were so many times where it just felt like there was just no lift off the glass or like he was easily pushed out from his spot and was just unable to convert. So that's some of the stuff I do worry about.
Yeah, and I think too with that finishing stuff, there were some times where, like I said, especially when he brings the ball like waist level or a little bit lower, like on a dribble move or whatever, I felt like the defense could really dig at him. And I don't know if he's got necessarily the upper body strength to like fend people off as well. And I hate to be one of those people that makes those usual like European big tropes or whatever, but he feels more finesse sometimes as opposed to just being a power big man. But he does like to put pressure on the rim. Like I said, he does draw contact. He does have a tendency, though, to wherever he feels or he senses that he is about to get contact, he'll kind of flail the ball up a little bit. So some of those things, I just want him to play as big as he is more consistently. And I think that, UNC might be able to get that out of him. Jam, one question I want to ask you, though, is what do you think about the pairing of him and then the supposed freshman sensation that they're going to be getting, Caleb Wilson? Do you think that there's a good possibility that they have a strong inside-outside connection between those two?
Yeah, and they show a little bit of it, potentially what they could show in the regular season, but they show a little bit of that in the scrimmage as well.
Yep.
I'm hoping and kind of expecting Caleb Wilson to start as the 4 and Veesaar as the 5. We'll see how Jaron Stevenson kind of fits in that situation, transfer from Alabama as
I
well
like
too.
Jaron too, yeah.
Same. So I expect him to get some minutes and can step out and shoot. Should be very interesting. James Brown is there as well too. So they do have a very interesting group of bigs, but I do expect Caleb Wilson and Veesaar to work together. And Veesaar, we kind of hinted around a little bit, but we'll flat out say I think that he is a pretty underrated passer. You mentioned stuff
Oh,
that he
love
can
the
do.
high-low. Yeah.
Exactly, the high-low stuff, and UNC fans and Hubert Davis are going to drool over that. He is a good job of finding mismatches in those situations, good placement on those type of passes. And that's like the general passing field that he has, and the short roll, as you mentioned, man, that can be a real weapon for him and for UNC. There were many times where he gets the short roll lob on the other side and be able to read the floor. So I really do want to see how they continue to utilize them together. And the one thing you mentioned about the play finishing that I just wanted to talk about real
Yeah.
quick, it is it can be very frustrating because you mentioned like he can be finessed around the rim. And other times it's straight power. And
Yes.
a lot of times it's usually when he has a runway but he will sometimes like he'll show that he has no fear and be able to attack and challenge guys with dunks around the rim. I just want to see that, as you said, more consistently.
Yeah, the consistency is the big thing, and thank you for touching on that, Jim, because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on that. That what if he has a runway, he will, like you mentioned, Jim, he'll take off and throw down over the top of the defense. Other than that, there's a lot of finesse, a lot of counters to his post moves and stuff like that that he can work in on. And you mentioned too, like the lobs. In my notes, I was just like, he can make the lobs from that mid post. We saw it
Yeah.
at Arizona last year. I think that Caleb Wilson will benefit greatly for playing alongside Veesaar in that regard, because Wilson is a tremendous athlete coming in as a freshman this year. The defense is where it gets a little concerning, though. I think that there's a wide range of opinions on Veesaar as a defender too. I'm more on the concerned aspect, but there's some people who truly believe in his defensive abilities. Where do you kind of fall on that spectrum there, Jam?
It's the weakest part of his game, in my opinion.
Mm.
I'm all for 1.1 box per game, 1.8 stocks per game. That's great. There's some of the defensive playmaking, a little bit of the weak side rim protection, but he's just not vertically explosive, or just he's not going to be a rim protector. And as I mentioned before, I do believe that he's going to be just a drop defender. So it's going to be about how good can he be in drop. Can he be mobile enough in drop? Can he read the situation, be able to play both, and use his length and just his IQ. So I really do want to see that. But when you kind of take away the versatility you like from your bigs, and you're going to be a drop defender, you got to be dominance too strong, but you have to be able to really be able to thrive if you're going to just play that one type of style. And I don't have a lot of confidence right now in him being able to do that.
Yeah, I think that he's got the strength to hold up against like being back down a little bit. I think that he does. He gives effort on the defensive end.
Yeah,
Where I think that he does a good job of, you know, trying to give effort. He has good length to bother shots and stuff like that. Wants to defend with his chest. He wants to be a physical defender. I'm just concerned, like you mentioned, Jam, in terms of ground coverage. Like, our rotation's going to be too much for him to go from, okay, I'm in help, to all of a sudden I'm like trying to
mhm,
wall off this driving lane right now. And am I going to be able to deter anybody from wanting to challenge me at the basket? I don't necessarily think so. I think that at his size and with his effort, he's going to come up with some good stops. Like, I'm not just
yeah,
going to sit here and say it's going to be all negative defense or anything like that, because with a try hard, you can do a lot of good things defensively.
exactly.
I just worry about the athleticism, being able to carry him against more consistent physical and athletic kind of ball handlers and attackers of the rim. I worry a little bit on how he'll hold up against those types of a player.
Yeah, no, that's definitely very, very fair. I know you mentioned that you have him like top 60. Do you see him potentially pushing in the first round, or you feel pretty comfortable that he's going to be, probably because he's a backup big in the first place long term, that he's just going to be a second round type of guy?
I don't I'm waiting
He could be
for
open, yeah, understandable.
Yeah, it's open, right? I'm hopeful that one of these big men. I was kind of watching film on Tomislav Ivičić earlier, and I was like,
Hmm.
maybe he could be the one of the bigs that kind of step up, because we've talked about this already between Chris Sinak, who's going to be the freshman big man that I think everyone's
Yep.
going to be kind of keeping tabs on and looking after, and then Jaden Quayton's out of Kentucky. That's going to be the next big man, and then after those guys, it's like Terrace Reed, Ivičić. There's a lot of big men that could really throw their name into the ring, so to speak. Here, I'm not gonna rule out Veesaar. I worry
Yeah.
defensively, and if there's one thing that I've learned, and just observing basketball, scouting it, talking to people who are involved with the sport on multiple levels, is that big men have never been asked to do more than what they do now. And so, I, if you're kind of tilted on one side, you have to kind of be special in that regard. And
Hmm.
if you're not special in any one thing, it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna invest first round capital on a player. It would depend on a number of other things, the depth in the
Yeah.
class and stuff like that. Yes, I think that he could be a first round talent. Just coming into the season, I'm going to be a little bit more reserved in putting him there. Like, he can prove it to me, and I'd be happy to move him up. I
Of
just
course.
kind of have him in that kind of like early to mid second round range coming into the year. How about you though, Jam? Are you a little bit more optimistic?
Yeah, I do have him in that late first, like early second, kind of in that borderline range. But he's going to have the spotlight on him, playing next potential top 5 pick and Caleb Wilson, and obviously storied UNC program. So he's going to have all the opportunity in the world.
Yeah, and we both like Jaren Stevenson going to that program too. It could be fun with 3 big men on the floor at the same time, all skilled enough to play their respective positions. So that would be nice. All right, Jam, let's transition now to a player that I'm coming around to be kind of more in on at the start of the year, at the early onset. And I was actually talking to Maxwell. Actually, I was messaging him, and I'm like, these kind of switchblade guards. And again, shout out to Chucking Darts. I feel like anytime I say switchblade guards, I got to give Chuck a shout out.
Yeah.
But these sorts of guards, I think, are becoming like my kryptonite coming into the season. We've talked about John Blackwell being that type of a player as well.
Mhm.
Ryan Conwell going to Louisville, was playing at Xavier last season. The senior guard, 6'4", 215 pounds. You love that size. Will be 22 years old coming into the year. Last year with the Xavier Jam, he averaged almost 17 points per game, almost 3 boards, 2.5 assists, 0.2 blocks, almost 1.5 steals, with shooting splits of 45, 41, and 83. Jam, where do you fall with Ryan Conwell? Are you maybe not necessarily first round range, but is this a guy that you have on your radar for potentially crashing the party in the draft?
Yeah, I definitely want to see more, but I do like. Well, I'll say he's in my second round range right now. But you talk about shooting, like
Yes.
everyone absolutely covets shooting, and Ryan Conwell can absolutely stroke the ball. And it's not just standstill stuff; it's movement. They'll run off of pin downs, and elevators. Like he is a absolutely dangerous shooter who has versatility. I want to see with the ball in his hands, continue to show that pull-up three-pointer game, especially if he's going to handle the ball a little bit more on the NBA level. But I do think but I'm really trying to figure out if I go that route. I'm trying to figure out how much on-ball equity he has on the NBA level. So that's meaning he's going to have to grow as a playmaker. I didn't see too many advanced reads, him running pick and rolls, but there are some good stuff, some connectivity with skips and swings and of that nature. But I think obviously his value is going to be that quick lefty stroke that he has, that teams are going to have to monitor him and know where he's at all times. And for someone like Conwell, like looking at his 3-point numbers, I thought it was pretty crazy that on catch and shoot on unguarded threes, he shot just under 50% on 63 attempts, so 49.2%.
Insane.
Insane. So he had the ability to be able to play next to other league guards, other initiators because of his ability to shoot the ball and the versatility and the ball skills that he has. It's not just this guy running around shooting, like it's not Corver out there or anything of that nature. There are some ball skills with his ability to put the ball on the ground, attack closeouts. There's some juice off the bounce, but I think largely his role is going to be someone that spaces the floor and continues to provide competitive defense. I like the length, the strength that he has on that end. But it starts with the shooting.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, one of the first things that I have, actually, the first thing that I have in my notes is a shooter off of movement, one of these
Mm-hmm.
off platform shooters. So we've talked about guys like Cam Williams, and I spoke to you why I think he's a great floor spacer in that, on the catch, maybe even a little sidestep off of a pump fake, you can trust him. But
Yeah.
whenever he's running off movement, shooting off platform, doesn't have like the most sound fundamental base underneath them, can he still connect? I don't have that question with Ryan Conwell.
Yep.
He's fast, he's confident, he's a confident lefty with range. I think that the frame is really strong too. He's able to draw contact when he does get chased off the line or whenever he does initiate like a pick and roll set or try to take someone out of isolation. I think that he creates separations on his drive too because of that physical frame. If he's got a matchup that he likes and he's confident with, he's not just going to settle for bad shots. But if he is going up against like a bigger guy, I think that he does have a tendency to try to like get into that combo dribble and then step into a long range shot a little bit too often. I would like to see him do a little bit more, try to balance that scoring passing load. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if Louisville is going to be the place for him to do that, because they're bringing in Michael Brown. They brought in Adrian Woolley. They brought
Yep.
in Isaac McNeely. They've brought in a lot of talent around, just to fill out this roster. And Conwell, I think, is going to be asked to be a play finisher of sorts from the guard position. And I think that he's up for it, And we
Yeah.
touched on the outside shot. I do, on top of the, that strong frame, I think that he can get into some pretty nifty finishing angles and stuff like that. I think that the inside outside aspect of his game is pretty well balanced. That, at least it's diverse enough for his position, but I want to see him do a little bit more playmaking, because there is some connectivity to his game. But at that position, if you can't be a lead initiator, you're kind of pigeonholed into a role. And we've seen in the NBA,
Yeah.
you can still be successful by not being the lead ball handler at that size. You just have to be in the right sort of ecosystem around one of those jumbo creators that you kind of touched on, Jam.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see him on the NBA level as maybe like in the Isaiah Joe role, that 6'4", 6'5" ish off guard, the ancillary guard, that space in the floor? Or do you buy just a little bit more defensive tools and kind of equity on that end?
I do like the Isaiah Joel role for him on the offensive end. I do think that he's a little bit more defensively capable than what Isaiah
Yeah.
Joe is. I don't know what Isaiah Joe is listed as at his weight in the NBA level, but I would venture to guess that Conwell probably even has him beat in the strength department right now,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
they're probably close to the same age already. So they do have kind of that dynamic away from them going on, but I just think that offensively, that the passing is suitable enough, but the shooting is going to be the thing that is going to be his calling card. So that's why I do think like that Isaiah Joe type of role is a pretty apt, kind of comparison there, Jam.
Yeah, and then as you said, definitely bigger than Isaiah Joe. Isaiah Joe listed at 6'3", 165 pounds, which kind of seems like it's wrong. I know he's slight,
That
but
does
like
seem wrong.
it does. But that's what the NBA site has on. But yeah, it felt wrong to say too. So Isaiah Joe to say 165 pounds, man. They got to
Take it up
correct
with the
that on the
NBA
NBA
people if you
site.
don't like what we said. Yeah, take it up with the NBA
Yeah,
people. There you go. Defensively, though, Jam, we talked about John Blackwell and how I think how strong and capable he is on the defensive end. I don't think Conwell is at Blackwell's level, but I do think that he's, I would say, a net neutral at worst. So I think he's somewhere between slightly above average, and by slightly, I mean slightly, somewhere between like that on par to slightly above average range. What did you think of the defensive film?
yeah. I was right there with you. I mean, it's for a guy who's offensively tilted like him. It's going to be about using the tools that you do have and consistently. The length is there, the strength is there. I thought the hands were pretty quick at times.
Yep.
I want to see how much of the point of attack he can defend, how many types of point guards he can defend, or if we're strictly going to be like, all right, like we're going to put you on twos, you're going to be off ball. We don't want you to POA. So I do want to see what he can do from that perspective. There's a little more defensive playmaking to him. Just see what can he do to continue to show that he's growing on that end, and there's real stuff for teams to tap into.
Yeah, and I put in my notes that he's got the strength and the length to be, in my opinion, defensively versatile, can be a little bit handsy, strong enough to not consistently be backed down by some like wings and
Yeah,
players like that. I thought that he did a good job to stay over the top of screens. He's solid on closeouts, does not die when he is screened and when there is contact. Slides his feet on defense. I did think that he was pretty aggressive at the point of attack and did fight to stay in the play. He's just not going to be someone that NBA teams are going to be afraid to test. but I think that
Mhm.
he is going to do everything he can to make life difficult. He's not going to be, in my opinion, Jam, like one of these fundamentally sound defenders, but he is going to try to be an irritant. He is going to try to be a nuisance on that end to try to force events, because even though he's quick, I don't think that he is like explosive. I just think that
Yep.
he has the requisite amount of speed to be able to play in front of some of those other guards and wing type players.
Yeah, and I know it's always unfair to kind of like if this guy was just 2 inches taller, it'd be so much more in. But that's
If
kind of
only,
what it
right?
is
Yeah.
for him. If like you just made that jump from being a guard to a wing, and then it's like, all right, now we're really talking, and not just talking as a draftable player, but like first round talking. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see what he does on a very talented Louisville team, especially that backcourt. And if I'm not mistaken, I should be aligned to see them in person this year. I have to double check on that. But I think from the initial onset, when I put the schedule together for my scouting stuff, I think that I will be seeing them play this year.
Dude, that's exciting. You gotta let me know, and the rest of the people obviously
Of
know
course.
what you're seeing. But with that stacked team, Jim, we're talking about, the transfer portal being a piece of this evaluation. I think that he's easily a starter, but what do you think of the guard rotation? Do you think that we see a little bit of a minutes crunch, or do you think Louisville is just gonna be a three guard heavy team pretty much throughout the year?
I think they're going to be three guard heavy because you have three guards there, and that even McNeely's in the mix too. But like
Exactly.
all those guys, all four of those guys can shoot the ball and with pretty decent size. Michael Brown 6'5", Conwell 6'4". I think McNeely's 6'4" as well too. Willie 6'4" as well too. So I do think that with their ability to shoot the ball, and all of them have the versatility to play on and off the ball. McNeely's more so probably exclusively off the ball for the most part, but can do some things with
Do
handoffs
a
and
little
things
bit,
of that
yeah.
nature. Yeah, but yeah, I do think that there's going to be rotating. It's going to be multiple, like two or three of those guys on the court pretty much at all times. And because Conwell can shoot the ball so well, like the rest of those guys, like I don't think there's going to be any real strain for minutes. Who's going to close? That's going to be very interesting. But I think overall, there shouldn't be too much of a minute crunch.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be a game by game thing. Mike Hill probably going to be start and close. I would
Safe assumption.
assume. I think Conwell is probably going to be start and close just because of what he can do on both ends of the floor, and then it's going to come down to, is Woolley going to be the guy who steps up into D1 play already, or is it going to be McNeely, who already has experience playing within the conference? You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think that if there is going to be a crunch, it's going to be between those two. But it's all conjecture right now. But Jam, those were our first two dudes that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to hit this break, and on the other side, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite players in general, but one of my favorite transfer portal prospects. We'll be right back after this break. All right, we're back here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show talking about our favorite transfer portal prospects, part 2 of a 2-part series. We just got done breaking down Henri Veesaar and Ryan Conwell, and the third prospect is always my favorite prospect, it seems like every show. And today is going to be no different. We're going to be talking about Alvaro Folgueiras, the transfer coming from Robert Morris over to Iowa, playing alongside Bennett Sturts, wing forward kind of combo player, junior, listed at 6'10", 230 pounds. You love those measurements, especially with the skill set that this young man possesses. Will be 21 years old coming into his rookie season, should he get drafted after the 2020 or drafted in the 2026 draft. Last year, Jam, he averaged over 14 points per game, over 9 rebounds per game, over 3 assists per game, almost 1.5 steals, over 1 block, with shooting splits of 55, 41, 78. Jam, I fell in love with Alvaro Folgueiras, at multiple points last year, really solidified whenever I was studying the film dive for the March Madness tournament when he went up against Alabama. And even though he didn't really score a whole lot in that game, Jam, he showed off a lot of the versatility And once we found out that he was going to go play in Iowa alongside Bennett Sturts, I'm like, those two could be the most fun duo in all of college basketball, Jam.
Absolutely.
How are you feeling about Alvaro? Like he might be my Santi Aldama of this year's draft.
Man, like you were reading the same thing. I was gonna wait towards the end of it, but he gives me
Let's
Santi
do it.
Aldama vibes, a little Dean Wade vibes as well for me as
Okay.
well too. So yeah, I love the fit as you mentioned, going to Iowa, playing with Bennett Sturts and what they could do together, really create some real magic in the two-man game. Potentially, Sturts doing some inverted stuff with Sturts operating as the screener and Folgueiras operating as the ball handler. He has the type of ability, not Danny Wolf quite level, but he does, have that
There's only
ability.
one Danny Wolf.
Exactly. The man, the myth, the legend at this
That's
point.
right.
And just a little bit of background from Folgueiras. I really do just like, once again, the European game, the modern game that he brings. And he's someone that came over to the States, played at DME Academy in Florida for his last year. But obviously from Spain. I'm not sure if you mentioned that from the top, but he's also played in FIBA U20 Eurobasket this past summer. And I think that was the most recent film that he put out on tape. And not to say that, like, I'm worried, because I do like him. I think,
It scared off a fair number of
yeah.
people from what we fell in love with in college last year.
Exactly. It's like I thought it showed both his warts and then also just still the profile that we like on the pass, dribble, shoot profile for a big at 6'9", 6'10". But in Eurobasket, he averaged 11.9 points per game, 9.7 rebounds per game, which was first in the tournament, something we do like. Or I know I like, I'm sure you do, is his rebounding, so he showed that off there. And 4.1 assists per game, which was 10th in the tournament. And it's really in the tournament, like, he started slow, kind of picked it up late, but really didn't shoot well throughout the event. 21.4% from three on 42 attempts. And so he certainly got him up when he shot 6 attempts per game, and also 37% from the field. And that's just like, man, if he can't shoot, it's like, is this what it looks like at the NBA level? Potentially, like, is it like not a guy? It's a guy who's kind of struggling as a play finish with the physicality and athleticism like he did in FIBA. Does that continue to rear its head in this game? And if he's not shooting, it's like, is he going to get enough equity with the ball in his hands? He's a fantastic passer, can operate as a hub from the elbows. We talked about short rolls with Veesaar, but I mean, I think Folgueiras is even better in short rolls. I think a better passer and playmaker. So I'm worried if he's not going to be able to shoot, or if the shooting is not the level it needs to be, it won't allow him to be able to showcase the rest of his game, whether if it's being able to attack closeouts and make plays. Like, he really can make some fun passes as a big man, wraparound passes, skips, live dribble stuff. So I just worry about, like, if he's not going to be a consistent play finisher and kind of struggle with that physicality and athleticism on the NBA level. And if the shooting is not to, let's say, mid-30s, not even the 40% shooter, just like what it could look like and what type of equity he has moving forward in the NBA. Do you see some of the similar concerns, or I'm maybe a little bit too grave on what the negative side could be for him?
I don't think you're too grave. I think we can kind of fall victim to whatever kind of sporting spectacle that is in season at that time. And the most recent outing is going to be what it's going to be forever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the Eurobasket stuff. I mean, Alperen Şengün is supposed to win MVP this season because of how he did in Eurobasket.
He was
Didn't
killing,
show.
though.
He was killing. He was killing. And listen, I love Şengün. I had him high in his
Yeah.
class, but I just think sometimes we get too wrapped around the axle a little bit with that type of stuff. And let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, because I mean, on good volume, shot over 40% last year in college.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like,
With
you
movement.
have to, with movement, and like you said, it's not just park, no one's guarding me, I'm just going to hit open jumpers. Like, there's a level of difficulty. He does like to have the ball in his hand. He does like to create off of the bounce. So there's a variety of different types of 3-point shots that he put up. I think that it's all data, though. It's all a data point. Definitely keep it in mind. However, like, if I'm remembering how he shot last year, and then two, how Coach Ben McCollum just schemed up so many fun looks for his teams with Drake last year. I just think that he's probably like up at 3 a.m, just like drawing up pick and roll plays and schemes between him and Bennett Sturts, and he's probably just like sitting alone in a dark room, just laughing at the plays that he's drawing up, just because he knows that like teams are gonna not be able to stop it. And I
waking up in the middle of the night, jotting down stuff as he's dreaming about. Yeah.
He said, "That's it, I got it."
Yep.
But even beyond the shooting, he is such a skilled player. Like, you touched on the passing aspect of his game. I just, throws up lobs. He sees the floor well, makes slip dump off passes, passes within the flow of the offense, makes kick outs, can pass out of his shot in motion, which is huge for a player of that size to be able to do it. Can look off teammates and create openings for them, makes cross court looks, has actions ran through him at the elbow, mid post, and the low block. Is a heads up playmaker too. Not one of these guys that when he dribbles, he's looking down at the ball to try to make sure that he doesn't turn it over. If anything, I feel like he can be a little bit too saucy as a passer sometimes, which I'd rather tell a guy to tone it down as opposed to, try to ramp it up. And then he's not just one of these dudes that's only effective from deep. When he gets into that mid-range area, he looks good in the mid-range. He's got the size. If you want to throw a wing on him, he's going to have the natural strength and craft around the basket to be able to like get a shot up over the top of them too. So I just think that he's such a versatile scorer that if the 3-point shot isn't there on any particular night, he's still going to be able to give you a lot of positive things on the court. And that was noted in the Alabama game that I touched on at the top. He wasn't connecting from deep that game, but still scored a fair number of points, still got his teammates open, still rebounded, and then jammed too. I think defensively, a lot of people are just going to expect my guy to be a turnstile on that end. I think they'd be pleasantly surprised. What did you see on the defensive film?
Yeah, I mean, I love the effort and the mobility. He's not a turnstile, but I will say that I'm hesitant to, and I don't really see him being a net neutral defender. I'm trying to get there, and that's just my hope.
Sure.
And maybe shouldn't be ruling out plus. Obviously, all things still on the table. Just right now, I just don't see the requisite athleticism and kind of the quick twitch stuff that I would like to see from a defender like him, whether it's the 4 or 5. And I guess maybe to back it up a little bit, don't want to take it too far,
Sure.
but I think for me, where it's important to kind of figure out, where do you see him defending first? Is he more of a 4 of a 5? I've also heard it being talked about as like a big wing, which I'm not in that camp. I don't think he has the ball skills to do that, and I also don't think he has the foot speed to defend wings. So I think he's more of a try hard 5 or a 4 that he's gonna have to try hard, but I don't see him as a rim deterrent or someone that is really gonna prevent guys from attacking the rim, or I'm just quite, I want to be positive about the defense. Like I said, I
I
like
got
the
you.
athleticism and stuff, but I just don't know where that value looks like on the NBA level.
I get it. And in my notes, I have that he's likely a straight up 4 defender. I don't think that he's going to be a guy that you want on your ones. I don't think right
Yeah.
now that he's necessarily strong enough to give you plus minutes on 5s. But I think that, he's got good length to be able to stick with and contest against some forwards. And I think that there's still going to be a lot of utility in that regard, especially when you consider what he's giving you on the offensive end. If he's got one player type that he can defend well, I think that that's good. And it's not like he's going to necessarily get hunted on a nightly basis if he is a 4 defender. You know what I mean? Like he probably does, you probably worry about him switching on to a guard out in open space and stuff like that. I think that's going to be kind of like it's his output and production in that regard is going to be dependent upon the rest of the context of your team.
Yeah.
But I think that he does give you a lot of utility in the fact that he's a great offensive player. And I think that he's shown good production and good defensive playmaking feel, albeit at a lower major school. But I think that he does hold up well strength-wise and length-wise with kind of like bigger threes and I would just say 4s in general. And if he continues to get stronger and continues to work on like that core strength athleticism, maybe you're a little bit optimistic that he can get better, a la Santi Aldama. But I do think that right now you're probably asking him to defend 4s.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you can get a fellow stretch 5 who is going to be physical within the paint, I can kind of see that. But I think it's definitely certain matchup dependent. It's just him playing the 3 and the big wing and defending big wings. I just can't go that far.
I get it, yeah, because like I said, I don't think he's got the foot speed to go up against like twitchier athletes and stuff like that or shifty ones. But if you want to go kind of length and power on him, I think that he holds up decently well in that regard. But Jam, let's go from one of my favorite players. You brought up this next guy, and I'm curious to see kind of like how much of your priors are kind of baked into your evaluation as opposed to what we saw last season with Alabama. But because you wanted to bring up Derrion Reid, who will be playing for Oklahoma this year, the forward sophomore, listed at 6'8", 226 pounds, a very specific weight listing there, 226 pounds. Will be 20 years old following the 2026 NBA draft. Last year with Alabama, Jam, he averaged 6 points per game, almost 3 boards, over half assists per game, 1 steal, 0.1 blocks with shooting splits of 45, 26, and 58. Jam, I'm just going to hand this off to you, man. Like, why should we be interested in Derrion Reid transferring from Alabama to Oklahoma?
For me, the case is pretty simple, and I would say I am relying upon a lot of the pedigree and a fresh start. Obviously was up and down there at Alabama. He missed, I think 13 games, 14 games, something like that due to injury. And as a freshman adjusting to the speed and the pacing and being in the SEC, so I think it was just a lot going on. But it's someone, listed at 6'8", 226 pounds, as you said, former McDonald's All-American, a top 20 recruit. So, like, I'm really trusting that pedigree, the physical profile, the NBA frame, and a lot of what he's been able to show flashes of. And that is someone who could potentially go in the 3-and-D role. We'll talk about the shooting because that is obviously the elephant in the room with him, shooting 26%. But I love the frame, the athleticism that he has as a play finisher. He can get downhill as a physical driver. Would like to see a little more creativity, but I think ultimately on the NBA level, that won't really be his role. But at least at Oklahoma, he can have a chance to really explore that type of stuff with the ball in his hands. But I do think he is someone, when he's not going to be a play finisher offensively, that it will take some work for him to be able to operate with the ball in his hands and take that next step as a shooter. And I kind of look at, guys like Matisse Thybulle, who didn't shoot. I think he's kind of always the famous example of these really good defenders.
Yeah.
But the hope is that Reid can be a plus defender, a versatile defender, continue to use his strength and his length and athleticism to defend multiple positions. And then we talk about the level of defender that Thybulle and just event creator that he was. Reid obviously isn't that. So it kind of makes me think about, like, what level of defender does he need to be if he's shooting like 30%, even if he does have some of the connective passing that I do like as well too. So I think just really that shooting is the huge swing skill. And if that kind of comes to a respectable place, I think that's really going to allow his rest of his offensive game to take off. And I do think that defensive versatility and the motor that he has defensively, that's really going to have to be his calling card.
I like that you're bringing up the defensive side of the floor for him because I think one, if you're going to play for Alabama, you have to have, and you're not a guard, right? There has to be some defensive versatility that you're bringing to the table.
Yep.
I just feel like, Jim, I'm just going to throw one of my major concerns at you from what I saw last year, and it could just be, listen, Alabama, there's typically a lot of mouths that need to be fed. I feel like Coach Oates typically does a good job of trying to juggle, the amount of talent that he brings in. Sometimes
Mhm.
it could feel a little bit duplicative in terms of I have this many people that play this position. We were talking about Jaron Stevenson going to play at UNC this year. I feel like he
Yep.
probably grew a little bit frustrated with the minute share that he had to have. Probably the same thing for Derrion Reid. This is not sourced. This is just what I
Yeah.
feel based on what I saw. I felt like a lot of stuff that I saw on the Alabama film, Jam, he felt sped up so much on both sides of the floor to where, like, if he got the ball on offense, he felt like that was an auditioning period for him to where he kind of had to show like all the different things he could do. Defensively, I feel like that's fine. If you want to go all out and you want to make a play, typically the defense will benefit from that, but they could be a little bit detrimental on the offensive end. What do you think that that was just like his role, maybe even a little bit of frustration in the minute share that he had to have with Alabama last year? Do you think that he could kind of like tone it down and show a little bit more kind of like poise and I would say like slowed down decision making process this year with Alabama?
Yeah, I do think that he can. Not that I always thought his feel was strong, but I thought there was this like real feel to his game with the connective stuff, whether it showed up with him as a cutter, with being a timely cutter and understanding how to cut, and just swing past and those type of stuff. He can do more of the slick passes. That's maybe not his game all the time, but I do believe that he is someone because of the field that he has shown that can take another step on the offensive end, and because that's really where it's going to come down to whether he's going to be someone that's going to be a consistent slasher or rim pressure, or to be able to be a spot up shooter.
I think I said this year with Alabama, I meant to say Oklahoma,
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I do think that you're right. A lot of his stock is gonna be predicated on the offensive end. You touched on the shooting, how he needs to get better at that, 26% from deep, 58% from the
It's a
free
little
throw
ugly.
line. It's a little ugly, but he did show some crazy feats of athleticism with the Tide last year. I think that, he's an athletic finisher, lob threat, draws contact, pretty much a straight line driver, not a lot of
Mhm.
wiggle or lean in his handle or anything like that. What was it about him going into Alabama? Because you said a lot of your kind of projection on him is still going to be heavily kind of predicated on your priors. What did you see before Alabama that still has you kind of being optimistic? I get that, he was a All-American, one of these pedigree guys that, typically speaking, we don't usually get these guys wrong whenever they are so heavily vaunted. There you do have your misses, but by and large, the people who are supposed to be there end up being there. What gives you that optimism about Reed?
It really comes down to the physical profile, and he's honestly, if he could shoot type of guy, but everything else is there. We mentioned the strength, the length, the projectable frame, the athleticism. So when he looks like an NBA wing, he moves like an NBA wing. There are evolving ball skills there with him as well too. So when you see these things, you see a lot of tools and a foundation of tools that can be molded, and it's like that's what I want to continue to see. Even if the shot's not falling, can you show that value as a versatile defender? Can you show stuff at the point of attack? Can you be a disruptor? Are you going to run the floor and finish? Can you continue to show that you are a good cutter, that you can eat space when guys are going to leave you open, if you aren't hitting, so those are the type of things that I want to see, and I think he is capable of. He had, like I said, it's just the tools, the projectable frame, and the hope for the hints of the versatility to continue to come to the forefront.
I think something that I saw from him even on his Alabama film, and admittedly, like, I wasn't heavily blown away by the majority of the film that I saw last year, Jam, but some of the things that stood out to me was his kind of like inherent feel as a playmaker for his position too. I felt like there were some slick passing flashes, could put some real pop on his passes whenever he wanted to whip it around. Was fun to watch in the open court because he didn't always want to try to take your head off with a dunk. Sometimes
Yeah.
he would, put pressure on the rim and make a good kick out. I just think that a lot of the playmaking stuff and even the turnovers, I think a lot of it was heavily influenced by him just trying to do so much with the amount of time that he got on the court that he
Yeah.
didn't really get to feel the natural flow of the game. Everything just kind of felt forced and sped up. And I would say that, with him transferring and him going to Oklahoma, I feel like Reed is probably assuming or has been kind of told, you're going to be on the floor a lot more. We're going to try to help you
Hmm.
get the game to slow down, even on the defensive end, because I felt like, he was always trying to force an event. Could be reachy, could be handsy, uh,
Yeah.
wanted to show off his tools, but I felt like he got out of position a lot. I felt like his, feet, ball, man processing could have been a lot better um, throughout the course of the year. But I would just venture to guess, Jam, that part of the sales pitch for him going to Oklahoma is like, you're going to get some time on the floor. We can, because I think Jam, I heard Metcalf mention this the other day, and I feel like it's so true. It's like the best way to get better at basketball is playing basketball. You could talk about, practices and you could talk about film
Yeah.
study and stuff like that. You typically
Crazy,
don't get.
huh? Reps matter.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I feel like probably the Oklahoma sales pitch probably was predicated on more playing time.
Yeah, more playing time, the fresh start and year two, as we talked about, and we talked about this a little bit offline, that the hope is it's another year of seeing you a little bit more comfortable, although it's a new environment. You have seen what it looks like on a collegiate level from practices, from games, the pace of the game, the speed. So that is the hope. If he doesn't look more comfortable in year two with those elements of the game, and then I think there's going to be an issue.
I wholeheartedly agree. All right, Jam, we're going to hit our last break of the show, and we'll be back talking about one of my favorite trends. I feel like I'm saying this for every one of them, but I genuinely appreciate this prospect. I was really in on him last year at Washington State. We'll be talking about him on the other side of this break. All right, we're back here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show, continuing to break down our prospects of the second part of a two-part series, talking about our favorite transfer portal prospects. Jam, this next player is playing at Texas Tech this year, was playing at Washington State, where Cedric Coward, I don't know if anybody knows who that is, was one of the most meteoric rises that we've seen in quite some time in the NBA draft. LeJuan Watts playing at Texas Tech this year, kind of a wing forward, Jam. There might even be a little bit of guard to him. Redshirt junior, measured at 6'6", 225 pounds, will be 23 should he decide to come out after this season. Last year with the Cougars, Jam, he averaged almost 14 points per game, 7 rebounds, almost 4.5 assists, over 1 steal, a half a block, with shooting splits of 55, 42, and 73. Jam, I'm in on this dude. I have him. I'm trying to taper my expectations. I kind of have him in that.
Don't do it. Don't taper them.
I'm tapering a little bit, but I feel like you're like full bore on this guy. I have him in the early to mid second round range, Jam, but it might not take very long for me to be like, yeah, what am I thinking? Like, just go ahead and put this dude in my top 30. I think he's very, very talented.
Yeah, I have him as a late first rounder. I'm right there
Let's
with you
go. Let's go.
with being in on him. Like, he is someone that, as I'm sure he did with you, is watching him on at Eastern Washington first with Cedric Coward, and then coming over to Washington State. I believe it was with Coach Riley as well. And being able to show just production from a lower level to going into I almost said is I almost had to catch myself. Is Washington State in still the Pac-12 or what? It's so much movement. Is that still
Don't
the
make me
right
lie to you.
conference?
I feel like Washington
It's
State's in the
crazy.
Pac-12. I feel like it
Okay,
is, but it's probably
I
in
hope
like
so.
Conference USA now or something like
I know. Or
that.
think about moving to the Big 12. Like it's crazy, but
Yeah.
but yeah, he has a basketball bloodlines as well, and comes from an athletic family. His dad Walter played at Utah under Rick Majerus. Sister played basketball at Colorado, and his brother played football at Utah. So always like those bloodlines and just the athletic genes as well too. And for me, the sell and kind of the case for him, I categorize Watts as a 3 and D plus wing. That's
Mm,
somebody who can go and fill that 3 and D role, but he has equity in other areas of the game, whether as a scorer, as a playmaker, or he can slide into a different role there for you. And the name of the game with him, someone who has that type of profile is the versatility. Like we talked about him, averaging 13 points per game, over almost 7 rebounds, 6.7 rebounds per game, nearly 4.5 assists per game. So he was doing
crazy.
pretty much everything for Washington State, especially with Cedric Coward obviously being out pretty much all year. And I just really like the versatility that he offers. And I think before I go, kind of move on, just kind of speaks to the versatility even more. He had a triple double against Santa Clara, 2010 and 10. I'll be kind of remiss if I didn't throw that in there. I know triple doubles may not be as rare on the NBA level, but on the college level, it certainly is.
Yep.
But he also led them in assist, and that kind of just really bleeds into the playmaking, which is my favorite aspect of his game. And I maybe stop me from going a little bit too far, but I do believe he is one of the more underrated wing passers in the class. I just like his ability to be able to use both hands off a live dribble. He makes the wraparound passes. He can skip passes, pocket passes, the lobs. He get a little saucy in transition with behind the back pass, scoop passes. So I really do like the passing and the way that can be leveraged offensively in the field that he kind of shows with that. Once again, he's a guy who is another timely cutter, a guy that understands when to cut. So the athleticism there as well too, and the shooting that can really be the glue of his versatile skill set. Between both Eastern Washington and Washington State, he shot 41% from three, but the volume is just that's who personally I want to see more from him. Like yes, you are shooting over 40% from three, but he shot 1.9 attempts. So I want to see that volume go up to kind of solidify himself there. But when we talk about the versatile offensive frame, the tools defensively, the strength, length, and some of the defensive playmaking, I really do like Watts a lot.
I think Texas Tech, it could be so good this year, dude. I mean,
Oh
everyone's
yes,
kind of anticipating the Christian Anderson leap. JT Toppin has been a wagon over the past couple of seasons in college
yes,
basketball. And then I think it's kind of like a really good defense, right? Like I always think back to like what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers used to be when they had, Sapp on the defensive line, then they had Brooks as the linebacker, and then they had
John Lynch,
John
yes.
Lynch in the backfield. That's kind of like what I think about now with this team where you got Anderson on the guard, you got Watts on the wing, and then you got Toppin anchoring down the middle. I mean, at every level, you've got a threat now. And I think
Yep.
that Texas Tech could be, I mean, I don't want my Arkansas Razorbacks to see them again in March Madness, but we'll leave that alone. But man, I think Watts, whenever I kind of touched on it earlier though, Jam, is that I think he gives you some guard utility is because of
Mhm.
the handle, because of the playmaking, and that might be able to supplement whatever concerns people might have with Christian Anderson, who played off ball a lot. And I think that now with you bring in Watts, who is a big body, who can do some of the Darren Williamson things where he can give you some
Yes.
utility in the paint. He can give you some, put my back into somebody and get a bucket, but he can also space the floor, I would say, a little bit better than what we saw with Darren. And
Hmm.
you're still getting a lot of the playmaking feel from that position as well. So I think that this is like a perfect marriage in terms of we have a real potential NBA prospect here, but also when we're talking about transfer portal fits, I think that Watts just checks off so many boxes for this Texas Tech team. You talk about the cutting, he's got a good frame, good deep range on his jumper, a bit of an under the basket finisher, so would need a
Yeah.
little bit of a runway to rise up over the top of people. Not a bad athlete at all. I think that he can back down smaller defenders pretty easily. Good understanding of spatial awareness, can absorb contact on his drive and finish through that contact. And then you talked on the playmaking. I just sees the floor well, can fire in interior passes, makes the scheme passes. He's a really good stationary passer, kind of in that mold of a Darren Williams. I think that he finds teammates off the moves, has nice dump off plays. There's just so many things that he can do on that end. And like we were talking about earlier with Alvaro, if anything, he can kind of feel himself a little bit too much as a passer. But playing at Texas Tech, he's not necessarily going to have to do that often. But Jam, on the defensive side of the floor, I'm interested to see how you feel because you have him classified as a 3-and-D plus. I wasn't necessarily blown away by the defensive film, particularly last year with Washington State. I think he could be a little bit too hands down. He likes to stay in front of his man, so naturally he's going to slip under screens and give space. So, transferring up in competition, probably going to sacrifice a few 3-pointers playing that way. I think on defense, he wants to leverage his strength. Again, paralleling what we were talking about with Darren Williamson, kind of fill in that you're used to seeing. I just don't think that he's going to cover a ton of ground on that end. I would like to see him get low and slide a little bit better with his man. Just give more effort on that side of the floor. But I don't know if that's necessarily just due to the fact that he was just asked to do so much on the offensive end last year with Washington State, Jam, that you might get a little bit more effort from him now at Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm echo everything that you have said. The defensive part is where I do want to see him continue to grow. I like the tools there and some of the production. I've already mentioned the strength and length. The foot speed was where it gets a little bit dicey, and being
Yep.
able to defend on the perimeter. But it's going to have to be him using the strength and length and quick hands as a compensator. So that's kind of what I am expecting from him on the defensive end. And you said him going to Texas Tech. That's a team that does want to defend, and they have a great culture there. So I think that's something that he's going to buy into, and we should be able to see him take another step defensively. And once again, echoing what you said, just about the offensive load, it's not going to be quite there. So he's not going to have to be relied upon to do everything. Although I want to see him continue to show that versatile skill set, rebounding, being able to play make, stretch the floor, play pick and roll when he needs to. And just that, how him and Christian Anderson, how they work together, I'm very, very interested in seeing how that ends up playing out. I think they can work fantastic together and allowing Christian to go off the ball a little bit more. And it's just going to be intriguing because Christian also does have to show that in my opinion, that he can play point guard and be a
Yep.
playmaker too. So him being able to show that he can play on and off the ball, I think LeJuan Watts is going to be a huge reason to helping Christian Anderson showing that he can do that.
I think it's going to be interesting too, Jam, because I could even see Texas Tech like experimenting with Watts being like a small ball 4 in
Yeah.
college, and you could run some 2-man action really either way between the two of them because they can both, handle. Anderson is not afraid to get into the paint and mix it up,
Hmm.
even though he's a little bit more of a slender man than anything else. Not afraid to get into the paint and mix it up at all. So I think their 2-man game, the primary 2-man game, let's not fool ourselves. Toppin is going to be in that
Yes.
mix. So you could probably see some Watson Toppin 2-man game as well, which could be very fun because
Yep.
Toppin has improved as a short roll playmaker and even has extended his shot out a little bit. So I don't know, man. It's like Texas Tech. Everyone is talking about a lot of these other programs out there. Texas Tech is reloaded, man. They should be a lot of fun. But Jam, let's transition now to the last player on the docket today. You know, I have to bring some funk in with the last pick. You know, I did it last week with Quentin Jones at St. Louis. I'm a lot more, I would say, 10 toes down with my man here, Carter Welling.
Okay.
Who is transferring in from Utah State or Utah Valley. I think it's Utah Valley. One of the Utah schools. Yep. Thank you. Transferring in from Utah. Junior, 6 foot years of age. Did I fade out there, Jim? We'll be
you did
21.
You're back now. Yep.
Okay. We'll be 21 years of age coming into this season. Last year with Utah Valley, averaged 13 points per game, 6 boards, 1.5 assists, almost 2 blocks with a half a steal a game, shooting splits of 48, 35, 65. Jam, I'm going to throw it to you before I get too emotional with my guy here. I asked you to watch Carter Welling and tell me what you thought. Just break my heart now, man. What do you think of Carter Welling?
I like the tools, and I like the potential profile. Like in all honesty, saw him a little bit in like a real time last year, and then start to sour a little bit as I watched more last year, and then going back into the film dive, start to be a little bit more optimistic. You know, but at 6'10", 225 pounds, I think there is foundation for a dribble pass shoot type of big. You know, he's someone that shot 35% from 3, can pick and pop, stand still, that type of stuff as well. So 35% from 3 on 2.7 3-point attempts per game. I think what really kind of puzzled me is I try to figure out his offensive fit on the NBA level. I think it does have to revolve around his shooting. But when I look at the shooting splits, he shot 46% on guarded catch and shoot threes on 50 of those, which is incredible, especially for a guy 6'10", contested. But then looking the other side of the coin, he shot 18.2% on unguarded catch and shoot threes, the 33 attempts. So that just rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm still trying to reconcile those two things, especially when I think the shooting is the key factor for him. And it's like if you aren't hitting open shots, and I don't think that rate is going to maintain of him hitting guarded threes on the NBA level. We could be wrong, and maybe that's what he needs. He needs somebody to be in this space. You know, he needs that to really elevate himself. But I think really on the offensive end, that's kind of what I am really looking forward to. See if he can show that he is just a more consistent shooter in that type of situation, and then also just in general as well. And the play finish, I did like some of the play finishing, but I do worry about the overall athleticism there. But I was pleasantly surprised on the defensive end how his athleticism shows up, especially as a weak side shot blocker. That kind of caught me off guard. Like he's not like super explosive, but his time is fantastic. And he wants to just beat the shot. Like he really wants to get it when he can. You know, I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but I think it's a good time to mention it again if we haven't already. But he was last year the WAC Defensive Player of the Year, so we do see that 1.8 blocks per game, 2.4 stocks per game. I want to see, and I'm excited to see how everything just translates at Clemson. You take a step up in the athleticism, the skill that you see, the physicality that you see on a night in and night out basis, just how all that transfers up. And I'm optimistic. I can't get 10 toes down it just like you, but I will say that I like the tools. I'm optimistic of what it could be.
So in my opinion, Jam, like the reason I wanted to bring up Carter Welling here is, again, we're talking about transfer prospects, right? So there's a portion of this to where you have to say, okay, how is this player going to fit into what their program historically does? And you're talking
Yeah.
about a team who has lineage of players like PJ Hall,
I knew it. I
Victor
knew that was going to be the name.
Victor Locken, Ian
Yes, yes,
Shefflin.
yes.
Clemson loves their big men to be able to do a little bit of everything, including some playmaking. And I think Carter Welling just checks so many of those boxes because
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned the fact that he can stretch out and shoot it. That's what we saw Victor Locken do particularly well with Clemson, getting away from that Cincinnati program, going to Clemson. We saw him expand his shot. Ian Shefflin, not the most athletic guy out there by any means. You know, you and I, we actually got to see him at Pitt,
Yeah,
and he produced because he's just an active dude, knows how to use his body. He's intelligent, understands finishing angles, understands defensive angles and stuff like that. I see a lot of that with Carter as well. And then PJ Hall is like the creme de la creme of
yes.
all of those Clemson bigs. And he's barely sniffed the NBA, but he's still finding his way onto NBA rosters because he can still do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's, in my opinion, what Carter does, because you mentioned the shooting. I thought that he did a really good job as like a putback threat too. You know, whenever he's not
Mm-hmm.
shooting from deep as somebody else, he's going to come down with an offensive rebound and put it back up. I think that there was some dribble drive stuff to his game, kind of what we saw Victor Locken be able to
Yeah.
demonstrate last year. I think that he shows good footwork, nice post moves, and nice counters to those post moves as well. Below the basket finisher, nice shooting touch. The shot does take some time to get off. He demonstrated good hands. And I liked how just like how we were talking earlier with our guy Veesaar, I think Carter consistently wants to put pressure on the rim too. You know, if he's not shooting it, he's attacking the basket. I think that he runs the floor well. He has nice feel as a passer. He has some nice open court stuff too, like as a playmaker, to where I was pleasantly surprised by. And
Yeah.
then defensively, you touched on this too, and I'll touch on a couple notes and give it over to you. I think that he'll be a drop big and will struggle with more shifty players, but I think that he moved well with other bigs, and he plays vertically. You know, he presents himself to be a challenging obstacle for defense or for offensive players to have to shoot over. And I thought he showed good moments of show and recover. But there was just some encouraging aspects defensively that I do think that he's a long play to be an NBA prospect, in my opinion, Jam. I want to see what he looks like at Clemson this year. But
Yeah.
I think when I saw that he went there, I was like, you know, the Tigers got another one, man.
Yeah. Now I'm sure that had to be the sell, or at least a large
Yes.
part of the sell for Brad Brownell, as you're saying. Like, what's about them PJ Hall, locking, and just like what we can do with guys that play inside and out that kind of fit the profile and his skill set. Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what he can bring. It's always fun when those guys, the lower, I wouldn't say lower in prospects, but when you come up from a lower school, you know, outside the Power Four now and mid major, and you get a chance to test your metal at the Power Four conferences, and he'll be able to, by looking at that roster, he should be having a lot of time to have the ball in his hands, to be relied upon to score and kind of make mistakes and grow there. Just kind of looking at their big man rotation, like uh it's it's scary in
A
a
little
bad way,
barren.
honestly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit for sure. Of guys that I'm thinking about, like if he's going to play more of the five or the four, I think he may have to play a lot of the five. But we'll see how ultimately they will kind of lay out that front court and the kind of their offense design. Guess it'll be maybe RJ Godfrey and him at the 4 and 5 on
Probably, yeah.
yeah, and Justin Porter kind of running the show with Dylan Hunter. But we'll see. But regardless, I think he is going to be a focal point for Clemson on both the offensive and defensive end. And when you want to grow and develop, I mean, that's exactly what you want in that type of opportunity.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's show, man. We wrapped up those 6 prospects. We brought our audience out to 50 players scouted so far. Jam, next week we're going to be here maybe around the roughly the same time. And for those who haven't noticed watching us live, we're recording a little earlier than normal today, just to get some activities that are planned later in today, kind of give time for that. But on
Steven, you're
next
too
week's
kind. I'll let the audience know. Steven
okay,
was
okay.
too kind, and I I completely just blanked on the obligations that I have today. And Steven was very kind enough to move around the schedule to do so. I appreciate it, Steven.
Anytime, anything from my co-host, even though you're a 49ers fan, you know, you got 2 victories on me now. So
Hey,
there
there's
you go.
room for you in the bandwagon.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see how the rest of my life goes. But for next week's show, we'll be talking about the 2026 draft cycles, most likely too, and that's going to be a fun show where we're going to be talking about players who we think are going to fit particular kind of like archetypes and stuff like that. You know, who's going to be like best handles. We'll have some fun with it. It'll be like a little yearbook show. It's going to be fun.
Yeah,
But
we'll get
over
funky
here on
with it.
we always get funky, dude. I mean, we talked about Carter Welling on this show, but for the rest of the week for No Ceilings, we're gonna leave it a little bit of a mystery. I'll let you know though that Nathan and Maxwell are going to be talking about top NBA sophomores. That's going to include players like Stephon Castle, the guy who I felt should have been drafted number 1 overall last year, Alex Sarr, Reed Shepard, so on and so forth. And then on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel and podcast feed, Albert and Corey are slated to bring up one question for each lotto guy. And then the Tylers will be talking about on Friday their SEC conference preview. As for us, what do we got going on behind the scenes? On the 15th, I'm going to be dropping my top 5 offseason findings for the 2026 NBA draft class. I had a lot of fun writing that. Jim, what do you got going on behind the scenes, brother?
Finishing up some stuff on Caden Lewis, who I think is going to be one of the sleeper / breakout freshman prospects in the Big East next year. Excited about the opportunity that he has ahead of him.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow Jam at Jam on the boards. You can follow me at Stephen G Hoops. You can follow No Ceilings on any social media at No Ceilings NBA. Make sure that you're following this podcast, the No Ceilings NBA podcast. Make sure you're following the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast and the Ground Floor, a collaboration with No Ceilings and the Field of 68. Follow all of those because as the season is ramping up, we're going to make more and more content. You will see our mugs everywhere. But that's going to do it for today's show. We'll catch up with y'all next time. Much love, y'all.